Single malt Scotch today looks and tastes a lot different than it did 50 years ago. Throughout that entire time, David Stewart of the Balvenie has been making single malt Scotch whiskey. David, how has Scotch changed in your time?
I started in 1962, so it really was all about blended whiskey when I started. And then in 2 years after I started in 1964, our company decided to bottle Glenfiddich as a single malt. It was an 8 years old Glenfiddich. I think it was called 8 years old Glenfiddich straight malt in a green triangular bottle. And it was taking a big gamble. Didn't quite know how consumers would react to tasting a single malt and what is the difference between a blended whiskey and a single malt. But it gradually did very well over the next 10 years. So we had really almost 10 years with very little competition. And then the family decided to bottle Balvenie in the early 70s, and that's really when I sort of took over. I took over the kind of malt master role at Balvenie in 1974, just roughly at the same time. And then the rest of the industry really started to release single malts as well. But generally they were either 8 or 10 years old whiskies then. So the ages have evolved over the years. Generally most single malts are now 12 years old. Double Wood's 12, Glenfiddich is 12. And there's a huge variety of single malts now there that there maybe wasn't going back 25 years ago. What will happen in the next 50 years, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think there may be more innovation and experimentation, but I mean, we are still making our whiskey at the distillery at Balvenie the same way as we've made it. We don't want to change anything. We're still making the same new spirit that will go into the same American oak barrels, the same European oak sherry cask. So the actual taste of Balvenie won't change over the next 50 years. But there may be other innovations that I haven't thought about yet, or within the laws of the Scotch Whisky Association as well. We've got to abide by the rules of the Scotch Whisky Association. We can't just we can't add anything to Scotch whisky really. So we have to maintain the strict laws. So
this is an innovation, Balvenie Peat Week. That's fairly unusual for people who are used to an unpeated Speyside style of single malt from Balvenie. Is this the sort of thing that we might see from throughout the industry going forward, that people are going to be releasing single malts that are outside of their regional characteristics, shall we say?
Yeah, well, it's possible, probably just in a small way. You're right, we've launched this Balvenie Peat Week, and really this is us more going back to the roots of Balvenie when we were making and distilling and malting our barley using and drying our barley using peat. Which was more traditional. If we go back 50, 60, 70 years ago, that was what was used, even in Speyside, not just on the islands of Scotland. But peat, up to the war, was more difficult to get. So we're now most of the industry use anthracite, a smokeless fuel to dry the barley. So this was more just offering a very limited edition, taking Balvenie back to where it originally started from, way back before we actually bottled Balvenie, but maybe when we're using Balvenie in our blended whiskey, it was slightly more smoky.
So if we taste this, what sorts of aromas and flavors can I expect?
Well, again, it's still very much Balvenie. It's using Highland peat, which is a little bit different from the island peat. So it doesn't give much the same intensity maybe that the island peat gives to their whiskies. So this is a more delicate smokiness. So we just decided to take 1 week out each year. And this started in 2002, and each year since then we've been just taking 1 week at the distillery. We've been buying in this peated malt from the maltsters and distilling with that peated malt for 1 week. That's why we've called it Peat Week. So it's now 14 years old. So we decided, well, this is probably the right time to bottle it. We have done a number of 14-year-old Balvenies. So I say it's very much, it's still got the honey and the citrus and the sweetness, but in the background, even on the aroma, you'll get that nice delicate, you get this in the subtle smokiness in the background, and the same when you taste it, you'll just get that nice delicate sort of smoky flavour just in the background, but still very much on the Balvenie style. So if anyone who likes Balvenie and likes a little bit smoky whiskies, this is a great whisky to try.
Do you think then that the idea of there being a specific style for a region is becoming less relevant? I mean, this is clearly a Speyside whiskey, but again, most consumers don't think peat when they hear the word Speyside.
No, they don't. I agree. Peat generally is from the islands of Scotland. So you're right, there's 5 regional regions in Scotland, and I think they're still relevant today. The 5 regions, although some of the Speyside whiskies are doing a limited edition peat, generally most will still be tradition to that area. So I think there's still a difference between, I think, the islands and the lowlands, and maybe the Campbelltowns. There's still clear differences there. Maybe a slightly blurring of the lines between the Highlands and the Speysides, because there's similarities between both. You get the nice, sweet, complex, fruity whiskies in both regions, and you also get the lighter, more delicate whiskies in both regions as well. But there's so many whiskies in the Speyside region, 40, 50 different distilleries there, that I think it still warrants having a region of its own. So I say this is small, and going back to what we used to do way back 50, 60 years ago. But generally, most of the whiskies, this might account for 1 or 2% of what we sell from Speyside. So most of the whiskies will still be on that kind of fruity, sweet, fruity, complex sort of style that you expect from the Speyside region.
Well, it's a beautiful whiskey. I don't care if it falls in specific characteristics or not. It's really nicely done, and it's such a treat to enjoy it with you.
Okay, I'm glad you enjoy it.
Thanks a lot, David.
Okay, thank you, Solange.